These two drones are the epitome of specs on paper versus the experience when you actually use the drone. In one corner we have the Mini 3 Pro. It's been out since April of 2022. Pause the screen if you want to look at the specs. On the other side we have this Autel Evo Nano Plus, just like the Mini 3 Pro, 249 grams. The specs are basically lined up to be comparable and the price range is similar enough. Then there's also funsy features for each of these drones. Once again, these match up pretty well, except the Mini 3 Pro has vertical filming and a 47-minute option for the battery you can upgrade to, and the Nano Plus has no geofencing and it's got a bunch of fun colors that you can pick from. Look at these two shots side by side, just to not waste any time. Just a standard park shot in the middle of the day. Lots of clouds back there so you have some texture to look at and you can see how the drone handles highlights. This to me used to be the bottom line, that you can prove that one drone can match the picture quality of another. Whatever you have to do to get there, you just learn how to work with it. You can pick spots off of each one, like which one was good at one thing or another. The Nano Plus is the drone that convinced me that that is a stupid basis to go off of. The amount of time I've spent restarting the drone, replanning shots, just doing overshots, changing the settings and adjusting, updating firmware, just to get to the point where we can compare the image. So much thought has been put into that now all those minor nuances are a metric being used against the Nano Plus, and honestly, that is what is crippling this drone before it can even start to compete. We're going to divide this into a couple of areas, that way it makes it clearer, and so that I don't get people commenting going, oh, you just dismissed the drone and then didn't explain why. So focusing first on just the image you get in the end. This is what you're looking at straight out of the camera without any adjusting. I know a lot of beginners are going to take a big step up to this drone. If you're just taking footage from the card or through the app, this is what you wind up with. However, I personally am trying to take these as far as I can, so I do some color grading to try and make them look as nice as I can. Something about Autel, they really like to over sharpen the picture. It's like they're trying to convince people it has better resolution than it does. It winds up looking very harsh and jagged and grainy on the edges. I really hate that they do that. And here's how it normally looks on a regular camera like the Mini 3 Pro. You are going to notice this the most with leaves on trees or tiles on a roof. Anything with a pattern just comes out way too visible. It should look a little bit softer and smoother. That's the kind of the cinematic appeal. So you kind of have to turn down sharpness when you're editing. That is the bait that catches tons of beginners because it's over sharpened and it's very vibrant. People assume because it's different that makes it better. The way having an over sharpened super contrasty TV will make your dad go buy it if it's at Best Buy and the guy's hyping up. That's kind of what's going on here. So I've always noticed Autel had that over sharpness thing. I don't know why they do it. So looking at the tools inside of this drone, dynamic range is being able to see the darkest and the brightest spots at the same time. I am really happy with how the dynamic range came out in this shot on the Nano Plus because I had no idea what I was getting since the exposure meter in the app just does not work. It's always 0. It's never read anything except 0. Because the preview is so contrasty, I have to go off of instinct and just how I know these drones work in general and hope that I get the exposure right. I've learned to work with the preview, but it still made things difficult. That kind of makes it hard because I'm getting inconsistent results with the Nano Plus. I know how it sounds saying this, but the Mini 3 Pro was perfect from the start to the finish. Completely exposed in the preview, and it came out exactly like I thought it was going to be in the end when I went to edit. So everything has been one take with the Mini 3. 2 years ago, when the Mavic 2 Pro was the best prosumer drone you could get, the only one that could keep up with the picture was the Autel Evo 2 Pro 6K. You had to tinker with settings a lot, you had to adjust the picture a lot, it didn't fly as well, but you could get really good looking shots out of it. In certain spots, it was better than the Mavic 2 Pro. Sunsets were really rich. I loved that so much. You get tons of beautiful red with Autel. That was the first thing I was most interested to try, and yes, for some reason, yet again, Autel gives you a very nice, rich, vivid sunrise and sunset, but like any other time, it's just kind of average. I wanted to put it in its strong suit because I think that's where it will give the Mini 3 Pro a run for its money. We're gonna splurge for this one. I traveled to the exotic Sonoran Desert to get these shots. DJI did improve in the reds department though, so sunsets are starting to look a lot better on this drone. Dynamic range on both of these drones is really impressive, but I got it on the first take with the Mini 3 and take 4 with the Evo because it just flies weird. But the Mini 3 Pro did a better job of capturing the majesty of driving up to your 8-car garage and evading taxes. So on this one, I'm going to say the Mini 3 Pro. Pulling up to this rock up here on this hill, I could tell this would be hard for both drones. This is what I mean with the Autel being inconsistent. Now it just starts to look over-processed and it's like the color's a little weird. The sky and the sun are overpowering right here. It's not a bad shot though. These are small sensor drones. I'm just looking for issues, but the Mini 3 Pro adjusted a lot better, and this is just Lion King over here the whole time. Perfect example though. You see how soft and inviting this is? If I flip back and forth, this is where Autel's sharpening is hurting things. You have so much to look at, it's overwhelming, it's not inviting. There's no comparison for this shot. I forgot to film it with the DJI, but it looks nice, so here you go. I did get a different downward shot though, because this is, by the way, very easy gold at sunset to go for these. On the way out, going over the top of our Lion King rock, we're starting to get some really nice lighting. This is like the perfect 5-minute window. Both shots look really good here. This is the perfect time to film in the desert. And then the Autel just does this Michelangelo painting on the way out. I'm going to land and I didn't even know I was still recording. And this is like the most fantastic. Look at how nice the sky is in the clouds. And then even when I get down here to the shade, the car balances out really well with the background. Inconsistent results. I still don't completely understand this. What about more professional settings? In my bigger drones, you have flatter profiles for color that let you film more details, more shadows, then you just color it manually in the editor later. With both of these being a bridge from convenience to more professional settings, it's great to see the Autel has an option for shooting in a log profile, where the Mini 3 Pro has something similar called D-Cinelike. That's a really awesome feature to have. I think what happened is, in the Autel boardroom, one guy was like, let's add a log profile. Another engineer was like, let's take the contrast down. And then some guy eating glue in the corner was like, let's make it full auto. But he's the boss's cousin, so they like let him have his input, and that's what they went with. Why do you add a professional feature like log, but then you have to use it in the most amateur setting possible in full auto? Why? What is the point of that? I don't understand. Immediately, the white balance is going to change when I face away from the sun. The shutter speed is going to change the whole time. You have to color grade the footage because that's why you shot in log, but the footage keeps changing, so it doesn't really work as well. You can see in this spot when I moved the image from the beginning in front of the trees to the back, when it's brighter back there, you can see the shift in the brightness in the sky because the shutter is changing. People always make assumptions in YouTube videos like this, like they know the company. I wasn't there. I don't know what happened. Maybe they have a good reason. I will say it's better than nothing. It just is a weird head scratcher. And compared to the normal profile, the A-log does capture more shadows, and the trees and the shade look a lot better on this one. Then the Mini 3 Pro has D-Cinelike, and you have manual controls the entire time. It's also 10-bit, which is like just add 3% to the quality of the color compared to a normal camera. Aside from looking better, it has manual control, so I'm gonna give it to the Mini 3 Pro with this again. Maybe the Mini 3 Pro has a better processor in it so it can handle stuff like that. I don't know. Also, I want to apologize for just giving you a bunch of trees to look at to compare. The good news, I got this really neat haboop footage because this was every day for like 2 weeks as soon as I needed to film with these drones. And then here is the DJI at sunset. I'm trying to film as fast as I can with both before the sun goes down. The Autel shot looks better here. The problem is I was aiming for the sun to see like the color and dealing with highlights. That preview is pretty contrasty, especially in sunset, so this was my fault because it was hard to tell and it came out too bright, but it wound up looking like a better picture in the end, so I'll give this one to the Autel. It's very hard to time sunset comparisons. The Autel looks great here, but it was also like 5 minutes earlier, so I'm not really sure. It is doing a good job though at sunset. Moving on to flying and cinematography, which I don't even have a script for this part, I'm just gonna whine. Mini 3 Pro is the winner. There is no competition here. The Mini 3 Pro flies so well that everything that you're looking at is done in normal mode. I had to be in the slowest, smoothest setting on the Autel, and it still just didn't get anything perfectly. Even when you adjust the settings, the EXP, flying the smoothest mode, you still just don't get really intuitive movement. Yes, there is a learning curve. I have owned a drone before, but we're talking about when I start the drone, there are no controls for the video settings. If you connect to the drone on the ground, force quit the app, and then restart the app, then you can adjust video settings and options and controls and stuff. That's not a learning curve. That's just like, what if I just never messed around with it enough to figure that out? I would be flying and it would completely halt me because the collision sensors would see something that isn't there. This happened multiple times. So many weird little things like that. When you do get it working, simple shots are all you have. Forward, backwards, left, right. But any like panning, turning, tilting, all of it at once is way too hard. Some people only want the most basic shots. Not me. I want to be able to turn and pan and tilt, and that's why the Mini 3 Pro is a lot more fun for me. There is also vertical filming on the Mini 3 Pro, and if you're young enough to have an Instagram or a TikTok, it's nice to know ahead of time what the framing will look like because you film vertical. This is not a deal breaker, it's just really cool to have. I think that's shocking too to people when they hear it's $950. Why is the price like this? To be fair, the Nano Plus was built to topple the Mini 2, and on paper, it blows it out the water. The specs are way better. I think Autel was really excited to get something out the door that could compete with the Mini 2. At the time, people loved the Mini 2 so much, it was such a good, rich experience experience that you could charge $1,000 honestly for a Mini 2. So they were on the right track here, having like a super version of the Mini 2. So when it released in January of 2022, they weren't anticipating a Mini 3 Pro in April. But it actually makes more sense that they released this drone hastily in January out of concern for a Mini 3 Pro that was going to come in April, which would own the whole mini drone market. So they might have cut the project short to recover money with sales while they could, even though this should have been the super version of a Mini 2 and owned the whole mini drone market. I bet DJI would have charged more for the Mini 3 Pro too, but then they saw Autel come out with this and thought, what if we made it the same price or lower, and it has a freaking smart remote? How are they supposed to compete with that? They just can't. So this Mini 3 Pro probably consumed the whole market, being $950, because why would you stray? Why would you need to go experiment with a different brand when you get a smart controller too? And then it's cheaper for the normal body. Good news, the photo quality is all there. You can get a really nice picture out of the Nano Plus. Photography technology in general is light years ahead of video, so it's not hard to get just a well-working raw format image. However, when you bring the raw photos into Adobe Lightroom, you can see that they look good. We know that there's a good source, but after importing, they have this weird color interpretation, like it can't read the color profile. Is this an Autel issue? Is it an Adobe issue? Nobody really knows. I can't find a solution online. It doesn't feel fair to judge here because we know that there is good color in the source. It's just, it might be a software thing. I'm just adjusting the color profile as much as I can to try and fix it. When it comes to taking panoramic photos, it is very slow compared to a DJI. This is another thing that makes me think that the processor isn't as good in the Autel, so you really have to be patient with it. I can't show you a panoramic though because I would have to use Adobe Lightroom to stitch them together and they were coming out wonky. So in that department, the DJI is an easy winner because there's less time spent up there and less wind blowing your drone to a different spot so the photos don't line up as well. It's hard to beat the speed of that panoramic, but even without comparing the panoramics, the normal photo I still think wins. For the range test, this was my range test. Both of these drones flew to the top of this mountain without a hiccup. There was no weird connection issues. I don't need to fly them 15 miles to find out how far they go and risk like an eagle getting it or it hits a power line and then I just can never recover it, just to prove that it works and it does what I want. Neither of them had connection problems. For low light shooting, like after sunset, this one was actually really satisfying. I'm going to show you both of these at ISO 100. Try and figure out if you know which is which. These are straight from camera, no color editing. Then at 400 ISO, which is a medium amount of artificial lighting. Remember, we talked about the Evo being contrasty and vibrant. This is the Evo Nano Plus. In the same vein as sunset, this is when it's pulling its weight. Those issues seem to be working in its favor in this situation. The Mini 3 Pro has this smoother overall image that's more cinematic, and I would much prefer it at high ISO because of that. It just doesn't work in its favor in this situation. When you get to higher ISO, the Evo gets a little contrasty. The Mini 3 does have the D-Cinelike profile for this situation though. The Nano Plus A-Log has to be shot in full auto, but just dropping the Autel LUT on top of this, we don't need to do anything else here. This looks really nice as it is. And again, even in auto, this A-Log had ISO that was pretty high. In the end, it's coming out really clean though. It looks, you don't see a whole lot of grain. I mean, it's not perfect, but it's really good for a sensor this size. But again, the Nano Plus is the Bowser dice block in Mario Party. I couldn't change the camera settings for a couple of days. I had to reset the camera and the app. Once I took off to film this, I pressed record and it just decided I needed to be in auto instead, and it reset all my settings again. I'm willing to look past it though because this time I like the footage in the end, so I'm gonna give this one to the Autel. This was a learning curve thing. I had to learn that with the Autel, when you launch the Hyperlapse, it won't go slower than like 3 kilometers per hour or something. So I had this really nice setup with this blue pillar at sunset, and as soon as I started, it's gone, it's over cars. I've just got to abort. So I got a really awesome whopping like a second and a half out of that. Then I went back because I was still in the mindset then of I don't want to do Autel dirty, I'll try and make the playing field even. The other Hyperlapses were pretty frustrating. You do have one really cool mode though. If you're flying in one direction and you press the function button, it'll maintain that speed. So I flew in a straight line and this was how I got the best Hyperlapse. That's what I've had to work with because the rotate just never gave me something that I liked, and orbiting a building, it would just kind of juggle too much. So DJI will kind of do this. What I've noticed, it'll go zoom photo, zoom photo, zoom photo, and Autel was like photo, 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 photo. So on the edges and things that are up close, you see these like really blurry, ugly edges. But the second you try to go stabilize your hyperlapse, it gives the warp stabilizer less to grab onto, and it just makes it frustrating, and you wind up with weird wonky results half the time. That's if you're going that far and doing all that. Autel is new to this realm, so to be fair, I wasn't expecting them to beat DJI's hyperlapse because that's a very high bar to beat. I was hoping it would be a little closer, and hopefully they give you slower settings next time. There's also notable things that don't really have a category, and the controller would be the first one. It is hard to go back to the peasant life once you've had a smart controller with a big bright screen. It's one less variable to worry about. You just turn on the drone and then the controller. It feels a lot cooler taking your drone out when you don't have to fiddle with connecting your phone and then the phone battery dying, then people texting you, the app crashing, things like that. It's also very light in your hand, and you can look away and kind of hold it to the side. With the phone setup, you're trying to dangle this phone on top of your controller and it feels heavy. You're worried about it sliding out or falling. So this is such a boost to the experience that, I mean, I don't know how else they could respond unless Autel came out with a smart controller. I know some people care a lot about active track. I don't though, because I'm a fat piece of crap, so I'm never riding a bike or jogging. The Mini 3 Pro has really well working active track. We've already tested this thing thoroughly. I can't do a comparison though. Autel's tracking, I found out when I went to go film this part, it is not ready. It's been 9 months, and if it's still buggy and they aren't releasing it, maybe they just won't. This came out in January, it's now September. I don't think there's any more feature changes or major things that will update in the app or the firmware, which means the Mini 3 Pro is the winner. It was working from the get-go. Autel has one big advantage, and that is no geofencing. If you're somebody who lives next door to an airport, you know you have permission, you know that you can fly where you're trying to fly, and you don't want to deal with getting a confirmation code sent to you so that you can accept responsibility and stuff. That's every Autel in general, so maybe like go get an Evo 2 Pro or something, because during these comparisons, that only held me up one time with the DJI, and it was like a 3-minute wait where it said, hey, we're going to text you a confirmation code, and I had to sit there. Every other time, what held me up was having to restart the Autel and restart the Autel's app. Collision sensors should be a standard test. These behave nearly the same on all drones. Both of them could very easily see a wall coming in front of them. They both wouldn't back up into someone standing behind them or a wall right behind them as well. I'm getting very close to hitting them on the side, so you can see that there's no sensors on the side. Both of them have to be careful of that. Both of them will graze the ceiling if I go up too high, so they can't see that way. The Mini 3 though could see the ground whether I was over carpet, cloth, or over a hard floor. The Nano Plus couldn't do it over carpet and didn't see it, and I would have hit the ground, but it did land on the hard floor normally. I've noticed it's had some trouble seeing the grass a couple of times as well. And I hate being the person to like call out a big company and like really stick it to them and show them their product sucks and we the consumer. I'm never that person, because consumers are dumber than a bunch of people working really hard on a product for months and months. They know there's issues, they're trying to work on it. So I'm not doing this to get a rise out of people. I almost don't want to do this because I know I will sound like that guy. Even if all of these weird bugs are from me having a defective drone, ignoring that, it still doesn't operate the same or get the same quality in the end. Alright, in summary, lots of areas were tested with some overlap. Image quality overall goes to the Mini 3, the Cinematography profile and manual controls just work, plus no artificial sharpening. For flying and cinematography, the Nano Plus doesn't even compare, not counting the weird bugs I've got. It just doesn't move the way you want it to, and it'll fly offline and you miss most of the time. Low light, the Nano Plus wins here because the default profile is super vibrant and sharpened, but that helps after sunset. The A-log, I can't believe it's in full auto, but even if the settings are terrible, it has really clean ISO. That is hit or miss though. Photography, the Mini 3 Pro wins here because raw photos work in Lightroom, it looks better in general. Panoramic photos are super speed compared to the Evo. It does a better job holding still for long exposures as well, and that's a really big deal. Hyperlapses are phenomenal on DJI, and it blows Nano Plus out the water. Overall experience, which one are you going to tell your friends about if you bought both? The DJI, there's no hiccups, you film things on the first take, there's no fuss, no weird bugs. Firmware updates add new things they never promised, versus Autel, who sold the Nano Plus as a drone with tracking, but still hasn't added a follow me mode. Extra features goes to the Mini 3 Pro. Vertical filming, active track, it's $150 cheaper, and you can get a smart remote for a similar price to the Nano Plus. You also have a 47-minute battery option if you want to get that instead of the regular 34-minute battery. Shout out to Autel though, in like over here in a small way, for no geofencing, because this is a feature in itself that shoppers are out there insisting on, even though I would never care and I'm never by an airport or something. Along the lines of experience and extras, both of these are an awesome size and tons of fun, even just to screw around with. These little mini drones under 250 grams are their own avenue of camera obsession. Even though I have bigger ones, these are both tons of fun to play with for their size and convenience. You can take them on a hike, they play great with your Mega Blocks. Bottom line, if I am saying this to a beginner, get this because you have a lot less thinking to do. If I was giving this advice to another videographer, I'd still suggest the Mini 3 Pro. Better flying in cinematography, you have a smart remote and better preview. If this is for my 5-year-old cousin, 100% get the Autel. Orange, red, that kicks ass. You can get like Arctic white, winter white, whatever it's called. That's everything